Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show. Discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are. Hosted by Desiree Duffy.
Hi, welcome everybody. My name is Desiree Duffy, and this is the Books That Make You show. And today we're talking about books that make you relive past lives, or at least imagine past lives. Inspiration for fiction comes from so many different places. It could be from real life experiences, from real history, childhood memories, stories that our parents tell us, mythology, maybe from dreams, or in the case of our guest today, maybe from flashbacks to past lives. Our guest is N J Simmonds, and she was inspired to write her trilogy because of a series of flashbacks that she had. One was of being drowned for practicing witchcraft. The other was of being a young woman in a Roman village. And because this concept of reincarnation was so fascinating to her, it became the basis of her adventurous, romantic, feministic fantasy trilogy. And that includes the book The Pathkeeper, Son of Secrets, and the forthcoming Children of Shadows. Now, she also writes manga comics and is one half of the paranormal writing duo known as Caedis Knight. Now, these stories are magical, historical, and full of complex women, page-turning twists, and of course, plenty of romance. So we are going to ask her all about that because there is so much to discuss on today's show. NJ, hi, welcome.
Hi, what an introduction. I think that's probably the best introduction I've ever had. Thank you.
Oh my, well, my pleasure. Okay, let's start at the top. Because when we were talking online and you told me that your books were inspired by real flashbacks to past lives that you had, that's what made me go, really? That's interesting. So tell us about that.
I don't really mention it very often because it sounds so ridiculously kooky. But yeah, I mean, I was brought up by quite open-minded parents. So my father's Spanish, my mum's from the UK. I was brought up in Barcelona and then in London. And even though originally, like, my father's Catholic, and we were still kind of brought up in my sister and I, in very open-minded household. So, I remember my mother talking about books she'd read about, I don't know, UFOs or ghosts. I was never kind of told that it was a silly thing. And I remember when I was 5 years old, seeing a little girl in my room and telling my mum that there was a fairy in there, and I cried when I came back and she was no longer there. And my mother never said, "Oh, don't be silly," or "You're making it up." She listened to me. And then even as a teenager, my sister and I used to see strange things. We used to live on in an old block of flats, apartment block in London that had been there since, I don't know, the 15th century or something. It used to be old monastery, and we used to see strange things, and I've always read about it and I found it interesting. But to go back to your original point, from the day I was born, I've been terrified of water, always have been. And I was brought up near the beach in Spain and spent my summers camping, and there was absolutely no reason why I'd be scared of water. And I wouldn't even get in the bath until I was about 9 years old. And as time went on, I used to just have these visions of being tied to a stick and held underwater. And of course, you just think you're kind of imagining things. I've always had an overactive imagination, which is why I probably became a writer. So I never really thought anything of it. But then my life changed at the age of 24. I went backpacking in Australia. I had a breakup with this guy. And I had a friend in Australia, and I said to my mum, I'm going to go and see my friend for 3 months on my own. I left my job. I got a whole bunch of credit cards. He bought me out of the flat. We had a mortgage. It was really dramatic. I was like, I'm off to the other side of the world with my bag and nothing else. And I didn't come home for 14 months. And it was one of those really kind of cliche moments where I found myself, and I spent a year traveling around Australia on my own. And that's when I got into meditation, and I learned so much about the whole kind of esoteric world. And to cut a long story short, that's where I learned how to meditate and tap into these things. And the visions I saw was so extreme and inexplicable that I couldn't ignore them, really.
So when you first had a vision or a flashback, how did that happen? Did it happen while you were sleeping? Did it just happen to you and then you were able to kind of fine tune it through meditation? Is that how it
Yeah, I
works?
mean the holding me underwater thing I've had since I was a young child, and I always just put it down to the fact that I was making up images to explain a fear. You know, all children have these phobias, but the other one, the one that started it all off really was I was. This sounds really bizarre. I found myself on a pearling ship. For 5 days, I hitched a lift with a bunch of sailors that were finding pearls, and I spent 5 days on this ship, and I was really suffering from seasickness. So I'd learned how to meditate, and I'd kind of read a lot of books, and I was being a bit of a hippie and reading up about these things because you can do when all you've got is a bag and yourself and all this time. So I thought, well, to calm down and to make myself feel better, I'll do some meditation. And that's when I saw it. That's when I saw myself as a girl on a hilltop overlooking Florence. Now, I'd already been to Florence in Italy. And when I was there, I kept saying to the person I was with, like, I know my way around. I know this place. I've been here before. This is really freaking me out. Like, I know if we turn right, we're going to see this. And he was just saying, you're crazy. But when I had this flashback, and I'm not a historian, I know nothing about any part of history really, but I was very specific about what tools I was using and this view. I just put it down to just some wacky vision. And it wasn't until years later that I was just so curious about it. I decided to Google, and I just Googled places near Florence, Italy, Roman times, blah, blah. And I found this village that was exactly, I mean, I nearly started crying when I saw the view from this village because it was exactly what I'd seen. And I'd never been to Fiesole, and neither did I realize that it was a Roman stronghold way before, just when Rome was established. It was like one of the first Roman settlements before Florence. And I looked, the wall and the amphitheater that they were building, and everything that I'd seen was in this whole kind of Wikipedia page, and it completely blew my mind. And that's when I started reading about it. And I read a book called, what was it called? There's many lives, many masters, and there was like life after death books and reincarnation books, and past life, future healing, which was fascinating, that linked scars in our life to past life injuries. And I just thought, well, when I started to write The Pathkeeper, I was like, this makes a love story so much more epic if I can make it over 2,000 years instead of over one lifetime.
So, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Well, I love how it's influenced your writing. And you mentioned something too about healing. So you experienced this traumatic drowning-like situation as apparently a witch many, many lives ago. By exploring this, by researching it, by bringing it to the forefront, do you feel like it helped you heal? Did you get over your fear, or is it still there?
No, it didn't. It should have. It should have, according to the books. No, I mean, the only reason I ever linked that to witchcraft was actually I've always been fascinated with everything to do with like witches or suffragettes or real feminist things. And it wasn't until I moved to the Netherlands, where I am now, so I've lived all over, and I met a woman who's like a psychic, and she I'd never met her before, and she was introduced to me via a friend. And I walked into the room and she looked at me, and honest to God, the first thing she said to me was, "You're a witch." And of course, everybody else around the table looked at us, and I looked at her and I was like, "I am actually. Tell me more." And then she, it was very surreal. And then I don't normally walk around like speaking this way, and and she started to say to me, "This is what I can see that happened to you," and she described the past life flashback in this book, the exact story. And I looked at her, she hadn't read it. It wasn't even published at the time. And I looked at her and I said, "I've just written that story. I just made it up." And she said, "You didn't make it up, you remembered it." And that completely freaked me out. She doesn't get drowned in the book. She gets killed in a different way. But all these kind of things and themes and tropes that I ended up included, she was like, no, that happened to you, which was bizarre. And she ended up helping me with some other past life regressions, which brought about some very interesting visions as well. So
Oh my. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
let's set the stage for your trilogy, because now you've teased us. We know a little bit about it. 2,000 years. There's romance in there, real flashbacks. Can you tell the audience what this series is about? What can they expect from it?
Well, it's about forbidden and eternal love. Zach and Ella meet in the first book in The Pathkeeper. And to begin with, it does read a little, I mean, she's 19, so it reads, like a contemporary romance. Will they, won't they get together? But he's very mysterious and nobody knows who he is. And it's not until the story unfolds, without giving too much away, that you realize he's been in every one of her every one of her past lives. And we see that through simultaneous flashbacks. So it also goes back to World War II and the Blitz in London, which is where I was mainly brought up as a teen. And so there's lots of different stories that are told. And as you're reading it, the readers are initially a bit confused, because it's like, how does this all tie in? And then you realize they're the stories of her mother, her mother's mother, her past life, Zach, and how it all intermeshes, and it takes them to where they are now. And over 2,000 years, he wasn't allowed to be with her, but he's been in her life over like 100 lifetimes. But on this lifetime, they do get together, and that sets into motion, because obviously they're fighting against fate. It sets into motion all these series of events where they find themselves in the end in the south of Spain, where I was when I wrote it, actually. So it takes you around Europe as well, the series. So that's the first book, and it's all very dramatic. And the second book twists things up a little bit. So we find out, I mean, it doesn't give too much away because you can tell by the cover, we find that Zach's actually an angel. But as I said, I'm not into, biblical storytelling. This isn't your sweet, angelic kind of Nicolas Cage kind of movie at all. And sorry to disappoint anyone. And Son of Secrets introduces his mother, and his mother is Lucy, and Lucy is the original fallen angel. And she's really, really angry and upset, because that's the whole feminist twist. And then we see the witch flashbacks, that she was there and Ella was there, and you can see how all their lives intermesh. And then the last book brings it all together, because she's trying to get revenge. So there is a real feminist twist, actually, because there's a lot of exploration as to what it actually means to be bad, what it means to, it's a lot of gaslighting, and how she's been made out to be the devil when really she wasn't. She was just a woman who said no. So yeah, I do a little bit of a Dan Brown. Then I rewrite the Bible. But
well, a lot of people have already rewritten the Bible in one way or another. So you're one of many.
Yeah.
And I love that you take that feminist and give it a little the perspective and give it a little bit of a twist. So tell me. So you've written the 3 books now. Now the third one is not out yet, so that's the forthcoming one. So now is a really good time for people to grab book 1 and book 2, so that they're all ready when book 3 comes out. So as you're writing this, and you told us about the woman who said, no, you put that really happened to you. That flashback was real, and it's in your book. Do you look back at your books and wonder, did that come from my imagination or from something that really happened?
Yeah. And most authors do that anyway. I mean, I saw a thread on Twitter the other day, and I laughed because it said, I didn't know I was, traumatized by X, Y, Z until I saw it in my own books, and the books did actually evolve. Like, I didn't realize how I was, when I started writing the book, my children were 1 and 3, and they're now 10 and 12. I didn't realize how much of what it means to be a mother and what it means to be a woman influenced what I was writing. And it's the same with the whole past life thing. I didn't understand why I was drawn to certain places until I spoke to this woman and we did other past life regressions, that I was like, so I haven't only been obsessed with, women's suffrage just because it was a project I did when I was 11 at school. It was actually because I was part of a movement prior to that. So my other past life that she did for me, which I fought against, I was saying to her, I'm making this up, I'm a writer, how do I know that this isn't a load of nonsense? Until I burst out crying and I saw myself in these marches, and it didn't make sense because the dresses didn't match with the time that the suffragettes were around. And then again, I went off and I Google searched, and I realized that actually what I saw were the marches 50 years before the suffragettes were a thing. This actually started in 1850 by rich women, just like what I saw myself as being. And and the woman that was doing the regression said to me, your name's Isabella, and she didn't know my children. My daughter's called Isabel. And I was saying to her, no, you can't be right, but that name's always been my favorite name. And that was my name. So it was too freaky. And I don't know anything about fashion, but I Googled what I was wearing in these visions, and turned out that that's what women in 1850 wore. And that's where it all started. And I thought, okay, that makes sense,
Oh, yes, absolutely. That's so fascinating. Now, the other thing I want to touch on that I think is really fascinating is you also write with a writing partner under the name Caedis Knight. Tell us a little bit about that, if you would.
Oh, yeah. So I work with Jacqueline Sylvester, who's a really, really good friend of mine. It doesn't help that not only am I in the Netherlands and she's in Berlin in Germany, and there's a pandemic. So like writing has just become that much harder. Thank God for technology. But we met at the Young Adult Literary Convention, which was part of Film and Comic-Con in London in 2017. She was there with her young adult series. I was there talking about The Pathkeeper, and she bounded over to me and we got chatting, and she was just so much fun. At the time, she was living in London and I was living in Spain, so we'd move around a lot. And we became friends, and I met up with her in Germany once, and we had fun. And then she called me out of the blue in 2019 and said, look, I have a really ridiculous idea. You can say no if you want, but I've always wanted to write a steamy paranormal series set all around Europe with the blood web, which would be like the dark web, but for paranormals, and every book would have a different paranormal character in it, and I'd love to write it with you. And I said yes before she'd even finished the sentence, because I just thought, what have we got to lose? And we were writing traditionally, this is with a publisher, but we thought, well, no, let's do this ourselves. Let's independently publish it and retain full control. My background's marketing, hers is promo and film as well. And we knew that between us, we had all the experience and skills that we needed to have a go. And it's been the most fun I've ever had writing anything, to be honest. And it's going really, really well.
Oh,
so yeah, that's how it came about. So it's called the Blood Web Chronicles. The first book is Vampires in Moscow. The second book is Witches of Barcelona, and it goes on like that for 6 books, a different paranormal in a different European city that we've lived in, where we speak the language. So there's none of this kind of trite making things up. It's the real deal. It's something that we know.
You're not using Google Translate, right?
No, we're not. And to make it even more complicated, the Witches of Barcelona has Catalan and Spanish in, because my family would be very angry with me if I didn't have a nod to the Catalan culture there. So, it's been a bit of a challenge, because obviously the cities themselves are as much of a character as these paranormal creations, and they're a bit steamy, they're a bit hot, but at the same time, there's a lot of each book is a suspense. She's an investigative reporter. She's a verity witch. She can tell when people are telling the truth, and all the way through, she's hunting for her missing sister. So they all tie in, but you can read them independently as well. And they're very funny. They're very sassy. Jackie is hilarious, and we write the books together, and then I'll say to her, right, now make them funny.
And then she adds the humor.
Exactly.
It's like adding an ingredient. Here, dash of humor.
Yeah, and I might spend a whole week writing a couple of chapters and put in my all, and then people will say to me, oh, the funniest thing was that one line. I'm like, oh, the bit that she added at the end.
Oh, that can happen. Well, it's great too. I love the fact that you met at a writing conference. And it's one of the things that I feel is so important. And I know right now with lockdown and everything, it's still a little bit hard, but hopefully the world is going to be opening up very, very soon and allowing for more of that again. Do you want to talk about just the magic of collaborating with other writers and meeting other writers, and the fact that when you go to a conference, you just don't know what can happen? And that's such a cool thing, I think, especially for new writers.
No, absolutely. I'm absolutely huge on collaboration. I was not born to sit on my own. I love to talk. I love to mix with people. I'm quite an extrovert, which is unusual for writers. And Jackie's not the only writer I'm working with, but the other projects I'm not allowed to talk about yet, but I will soon, hopefully. So I've been really lucky that I've got to work on different kind of books, different ages and genres with different people. And it's great fun. And I'm also part of groups. So I work with Rain Dance Film Festival in London. I do a lot of lectures with them. And through them, I've met some really creative, interesting people. And I work with the Collab writers. They're also a group of creatives in London. And through them, that's how I met the editor of the Manga. So I'm a huge believer in going out there and finding your people and connecting and sharing, because the books that I write with Jackie, I wouldn't have been able to write on my own, and vice versa. So we fill in each other's gaps, really, and it just makes for a much richer experience. Plus, it's so lonely at the moment. We don't have a social life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, and I want to ask you about lecturing of storytelling in business, because I know you do that. But first, you mentioned something that I want to circle back to before we lose it, and that's the manga that you do. Can you talk about that?
And I didn't put it behind me. I only put this one, actually. The manga's brilliant. It's just been a whole new experience for me, because all I care about is telling stories. And quite frankly, I don't care how I do. I like to paint and draw as well. So for me, it's all about self-expression and telling stories. So when I had the opportunity to write a manga, because the woman that put me in touch with, I'll tell you, this is a bit of an esoteric experience. So I met Jenny through Collab writers. She loved The Pathkeeper, and she said to me, it would make a great manga. And I said, do you know anyone? And she said, no. I said, okay, well, I don't know much about manga. The very next day she emailed me, she said, you will not believe this. I literally just got an email from a friend saying, my friend's a manga editor, she's looking for writers. And I said, what? Lots of things, lots of creepy things like that happened to me, lots of coincidences, if you want to call them that, or little miracles. She put me in touch with her, and instead of turning a book I'd already written into a manga, we decided to write something completely different. And we wrote Out of the Darkness, because it has to be appropriate for 12 years plus, and these books are a bit too kind of gritty and dark and a bit sexy in places, so they're not for kids. And it became, again, like all my books, there's strong females, and there's a lot of magic, and there's spiky girls and soft boys. That seems to be the combination I do. And it's set in a London council estate. For non-UK listeners, a council estate is like the projects, I guess. Maybe not as rough, but it's working class. It's not easy. I was brought up on a council estate in London, so I know what it's like I lived in a nice area, actually, but I lived in a group of apartments that were not perhaps, the most fancy or anything. And I wanted to represent that. I wanted to see kids that were from, working families, difficult families. The boy lives with his grandmother. The girl's parents don't have a lot of money, and she discovers that she is different. Well, she doesn't discover, she knows that she's different, and she doesn't realize that he's different too. I won't say what makes them different, and they come together, and it becomes a bit of, fighting for your rights. There's like bullying themes, because it's for younger readers, and there's also the importance of being different and how it's okay to be different, embracing who you really are. So that's the themes of that one. And it's a 12-part manga series, 2 already out, 2 have been completed, so they're lined up for publication, and the rest the illustrator has to do his magic on. And it's been amazing, because I love drawing, I love painting, I come from a family of artists, and for me to see my idea turn into a picture book is just, not picture, but like graphic novel, a comic, is just amazing.
Oh, yeah, that must be thrilling to see that when it comes together. I know a lot of writers and illustrators for comics and graphic novels, and that collaboration, that in and of itself, that's another thing where it's just truly magical sometimes when it comes together.
Totally. I mean, the illustrator is the star of the show, if you ask me, because I don't know how he did it. I don't know how he took it. I mean, obviously, I supplied lots of photos and lots of ideas and some of my own sketches and descriptions, but it was just so perfect that I got quite emotional. I said to him, will you send that one frame and I'm going to print it out and put it in my office,
That's so neat. That's wonderful. Okay, now you lecture on storytelling in business. Tell us really quickly what that's about.
Well, I mean, it's a bit of a buzzword, storytelling now, but as far as I'm concerned, we all tell stories. if you meet someone at a dinner party, if you are on social media and you write your bio, even if you're on Tinder trying to, we're telling stories about ourselves all the time through how we talk, how we look, what we want people to know about us and what we keep quiet. So storytelling in business really is branding. And I've been working in branding and publishing one way or another, magazines. I used to work for like Cosmopolitan magazine, and then I worked for big brands like Nike and Savoy Hotel in London, and back when I was in my 20s and having cool jobs in London. And so I've always worked in marketing. And it wasn't until I moved to Spain and had kids that I decided to run my own kind of consulting business for smaller businesses. And that evolved into storytelling. So it went from brand consulting and marketing to lecturing. And now that I live in the Netherlands, I was invited to the university in The Hague to teach their MA course on storytelling in business. And then I've been invited to lots of women in business courses. And I just talk to them about how to bring the art of storytelling to your business, how to have continuity with your brand voice, to ensure really that what you are saying in one platform, like your website, carries on right through to face-to-face, to social media, to all your literature.
High five, by the way. I just want to give you a high five because that's what I believe in too. I love that integrated marketing approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just so vital nowadays that you have that consistency and that continuity. And then I moved from that to also supporting creatives. So then I was working with Raindance Film Festival, which is like Cannes Film Festival, but the London version. And they do MA courses for filmmakers. So I was able to help them with how to brand themselves as well, and how to, they're all amazing storytellers, but they hadn't realized how they can apply the same principles to telling their own story so that they can, project efficiently how it is that they want to be seen as creatives. So I'm having loads of fun. I just get a chance to do all the things I love and just never get bored.
Oh, I can tell. It emanates from you. And that is so fantastic. Okay. Tell us where people can find you online, your website, social media, and of course, where they can find your books.
Right. So you can find me everywhere, really. Twitter. I can't teach marketing and branding without being everywhere. I'm not so good. You probably can find me on TikTok, but you're not going to get a lot out of me. But
you're not Twitter, dancing? You don't dance with your book on TikTok?
No. She does. If you look at Caedis Knight, she does completely crazy things, but she's 12 years younger than me. She can be fun. I do the more serious stuff. But you can find NJ Simmonds and Caedis Knight on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. njsimmonds.com is the easiest way to find links for that, or Caedis Knight, CAEDIS Knight with a K.com, and that's the easiest way to find links to all our social media. And then you can buy my trilogy at Barnes & Noble online, Waterstones in the UK, Amazon, all your usual retailers. At the moment, it's hardback and paperback and ebooks. And then Caedis Knight you can find on Audible and Amazon, and that's paperback, ebooks, and audio. That was really good fun. We've just completed our first 2 audios. And there's lots of news in the pipeline that I have to keep quiet about, but there's more to come.
All right.
You can sign up to our newsletter if you want to know more.
There you go. Perfect. And maybe we'll have you back at some point in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we could go on. We could have so many different conversations. And I just want to thank you again for joining us. This was fantastic. Thank you.
It's been so much fun. Yes. It was funny. I mean, it's 10:30 at night here and I was thinking, I'm really feeling tired. I hope I'm chirpy enough. And now I'm
Now I woke you up. Oh my goodness. You did. Well, and thank you. Really you are joining us from the Netherlands right now. I don't know if we mentioned that earlier.
Yes, which is why I probably look so tired now because I've been awake since 6 o'clock this morning. But
you're fine.
But it's been a pleasure. Thank you for such wonderful questions.
My pleasure, NJ. Thank you for joining us. And thank you, everyone, for being here with us today on the Books That Make You show. You can find out more about us on our website. It's booksthatmakeyou.com. We are also on social media, Facebook and Instagram, and of course, YouTube. Make sure you sign up and subscribe to our YouTube channel and subscribe to our newsletter as well. We give away lots of books and have bookish news and all sorts of fun things going on. Until next time, all of my book buddies, please enjoy all of the books that make you exactly who you are.
The executive producer for Books That Make You is Desiree Duffy. Produced and sound mastered by Phil Giangrande. Engineering by Dave Nabox. Social media and promotion by Bree Sweeter. For more, visit booksthatmakeyou.com.